Welcome to Lockbox, a podcast providing real estate professionals with action items for success. My name is Jeffrey Brogger, and I'm going to be your host. I'm the founder of two real estate marketing and tech companies, STEEZY.Digital and realnurture.io. In this podcast, you'll learn from top 1% real estate and mortgage brokers the exact secrets to their success. Welcome to Lockbox.
Welcome to Lockbox. My name is Jeffrey Brogger, and I am here with Brian Covey. Brian, thanks for being with us.
Hey, excited to be here with you. And I know it's a little bit later on the East Coast, but I'm excited to jam and add some value today with you.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about. And you are calling in from Nashville, Tennessee. So why don't you tell our listeners kind of who you are and where you're from?
Yeah, so I'm in Nashville now, and I'll kind of start there and I'll back up a little bit as my wife and I have got 3 kids. We're about to send them all back to school, which is the first time. Our youngest is about to turn 6. We got a 12-year-old, and then our oldest is 14. And it's the first time in our life they're all going to school, which is wild.
Wow.
And I think back, I was just in Memphis this weekend. That's where I grew up, in Memphis, Tennessee, and grew up on the soccer field and all that. I got to visit my parents. It was full circle. My oldest, my daughter, is a goalkeeper in soccer as well. And we go back to my school, University of Memphis there, where I went to school, played soccer, all 4 years. And she's out there playing with the women's college team with an ID camp. It's like basically getting exposure, let her experience college soccer and see if she really wants to do it. And so many memories. I went back to the first field that I played soccer at, and I had an older brother that was 5 years older. So any younger siblings will know this, but I basically just followed my older brother around. Like, right when he'd go to basketball, baseball, soccer, football, whatever it was, I just got toted in the car and
right.
I went. But I really attribute a lot of who I am today, both from my parents and my brother, but also just being on the sports field for a majority of my life. That's really what I did all the way through college, and then transitioned to business. But I look back, those lessons I learned from coaches and mentors and my family gave me the foundation today that a lot of times I rely on to make decisions, to make sure that, I'm continually learning and growing and pushing myself. And then also, just to be a great dad and husband and continually find what is my potential? Where can I add value in the world? How do I give back? And at the same time, have some fun.
Absolutely. And you know what? That's what it's all about. We were talking a little bit beforehand about the crossover between the things that we learned growing up in sports and then what is mandatory today to succeed in business. And I'm really curious about your background as a part of the U.S. soccer team in the Olympics, right?
Yeah. So I was fortunate. Those that don't know soccer, I tell this story a lot of, I was fortunate when I played. My first team was at Christ Methodist Day School, right? So our church, and I actually went to elementary there. But our first coach, those that know soccer know the name Pele, probably, right?
Yeah, of course.
So Kyle Rote Jr. was also an American football player that if you look the two up, you'll see Kyle Rote Jr. He was in Memphis. And around that time, he was coaching our church league team, right? Like, I mean, you would never think, now that I know who he was at the time as a kid, you have no idea. But I started with that level of coaching, and I said, man, I guess God had a different plan for me to give me that level coach and to really give me the passion of the game. And I had coaches that came on. But from there, I was able to continually go, and there's an Olympic development program. So you try out for your local team, then you try out for your state team. If you make it past there, you try out for regional team. And there's 4 regions in the country, 12 states. And imagine the best players from around the country come and they compete against each other. And the coaches are picking the best players, the chemistry and all. Well, if you make it past your regional team, those 4 teams then move into a national team. Or at that time, we were picking for the Olympics in Japan. And I tell the stories, I actually made it all the way to the final pool. I was in the final group. I did not get selected to go to Japan, which was somewhat heartbreaking, but at the same time was still affirmation I'm on the right path, but I've got more work to do. Life lessons already started showing up as a teenager.
Right.
But I came back, and then I made the U20 team, and then the U23 national team. And so I kept coming back. I never really made it all the way to get to go and play in any exciting tournaments. Like we went to Europe every summer, and we'd go travel and play, and played in a lot of tournaments. But I never made it to that official big stage, which was always something I wanted to do, which fueled me to then play college and then to go on and play professionally, because I just knew there was always another level. There was always another step. For everybody listening out there, although you may not make it to that goal, if my goal had been smaller, I often share, I may have not have made it as far as I did, but that always kept pushing me, as I always knew I belonged there, but what could I do to improve? What did I need to get better at to make that team? And still do that in business today.
Absolutely. I mean, you were surrounding yourself with the best in the world. There was a analogy a few days ago that I watched a video, and he was talking about how if you run a race, you run a sprint and you're the fastest person, you'll win. If you run a race and you're the slowest person, you'll lose, but your time will be faster. And the concept is like, when you're surrounding yourself and your goals are so big and you're surrounding yourself with amazing people, it pushes you to be the best version of yourself at all times. And that's when the real breakthroughs and the fulfillment come. So that's an awesome story, and really appreciate you sharing that. And, now on real estate, how did this lead into the real estate industry in any capacity? It seems like you were all sports and crushing it in that area. So how did real estate come to the picture?
Yeah. So I had really no other jobs. I got injured a couple times in my career, like most people. And so in the summers, I would coach soccer because that was an easy plug-in. But then I would try to get a summer job. But with the training schedules and everything I was doing, I couldn't really hold a job because I couldn't tell them, hey, I'm going to be here these days, these hours, because our schedule was so fluid with training and travel and all of that. And so I really went to college, learned, we had some great professors. I loved business. And I realized I had this kind of desire around finance, and I liked real estate, right? Like my parents owned a home. I saw what it was like to kind of go through that process. And I say I fell into it because really I look back now, and some of the guys on my team, their dads were in finance. They worked for banks or financial planners. I was like, cool. They dress nice. They drive a nice car. Like, that's got to be what I'm going to do. Like, that's just got to be it. Little did I know there's a whole lot more to it. And so I started to look for, like, what would a career be? I knew I wasn't a behind the desk kind of sit there forever kind of person. I knew I loved people because playing soccer and being on different teams and traveling the world and all that, I was like, I really enjoy people. And probably like many people, I started just to try things, and I started to ask questions. And I remember interviewing at jobs that I knew I probably would never get. And I remember one of those in particular, one of the dads was a bond trader, right? He was super successful. I went and interviewed, and he's like, hey, I'm going to do the interview just to kind of give you some practice. I'll help you with your resume, but there's no chance we're bringing you in, right? Like, I have no experience. But how cool was that? And I took that as a lesson as to, you got to put yourself out there. Even if you're not ready for that today, you got to put yourself out there. Because what that did for me is then when I got done playing my professional career, I came back, finished my degree, and I went to a career fair. And I was already ready at that point. I'd already been working on my interviewing skills. I'd already been working on my presentation skills. I was ready to present, and I got very clear on what I brought to the table, knowing I have no formal training necessarily, right? I have no job experience to put on a resume, but what I had was something unique, was a competitive drive and somebody that had never given up and had excelled in athletics, that people know to make it to that level, it is not just physical, it is a lot of mental strength. And so I would share that. And I got really clear on my interviewing of, here's what I bring. Well, a company took a chance on me, very, very entry level. I had to drive over an hour one way. And they started me, actually, when I lived in Memphis, I had to drive all the way into Mississippi to get the job because there were no other jobs. No one else would hire me. And I laughed because I'd go there, work on the weekends, and just worked my way through. And I took that opportunity because there was somebody there, again, that was willing to train me. And I could tell that Ken was the manager at the time. He was going to teach me the ropes, teach me credit, income, assets, all about real estate, help me understand finance. And man, we made a lot of calls. I mean, they just put you on the phone. You had no idea what you were doing, but I'll never forget those experiences. So I, in a way, fell into it, but I think it was very intentional. I think it was what was meant to be for me.
Right. No, that makes total sense. And you're able to show up and say, here's my value. I don't have the experience per se, but you look at this. This is my track record. I'm willing to work. I'm willing to learn. And that says so much. So that's an awesome story of just kind of falling into it and working hard. So LoanDepot, I looked up a stat before this. Last year, it was like $100 billion between refinance and purchase. Is that right?
Yeah, huge. Like
huge. I mean,
yeah.
That's gigantic. That's almost unfathomable. So with that being said, you are VP at LoanDepot. So what does a day in the life look like for Brian?
Yeah, so my role now has really evolved into, I say it's a growth and almost talent type of leader, in the sense of you're taking care of your current team. And so today, for example, I've had probably 6 one-on-ones with current members on our team, checking in with the leaders that lead the local markets and branches. And then I'm also putting together offers and trying to attract talent to join our team, because we want people in those local markets that are doing a great job, that fit our culture, that would represent our brand and help us expand our market share. And so most of my days are spent in those two buckets, with the current team, helping coach them through, or one-on-ones, help them solve problems that they've got, give them some perspective of something they're dealing with. And so while I'm working with them, I'm balancing that with also trying to have conversations with people that could potentially join our team and help recruit and attract them to what we believe, what we are doing. And then the third wheel of this is just an overarching, I kind of look at myself as kind of a culture ambassador of, we've got sales, we have operations. Our team that I lead is around 3 billion this year is what we'll do. So that'll serve over 12,000 customers. We'll actually get a mortgage through our team. And we've got underwriting, processing, closing, sales. And we often say right now, customers start online. The trends are there. They go online to look for a home. They look for a mortgage, all the information. And we want to give them a chance to finish local. And that's where our team comes into play, is we'll know the schools, we'll know the churches, we'll know the neighborhoods that you're talking about. And so we want to provide that. And so a lot of the things I'm doing is really just making sure that we're bringing in the right people. We're building them up to expand their capacity to lead bigger teams, to do more production, and then just making things are moving smoothly. And the culture is everything as small as we think it's big, but language, things that we say, how we communicate, right? I do a lot of video messages to our team. Like yesterday, I did our video recognition update on the market. Who are our winners in the month of July? What are we looking for in the market to change? Where are the opportunities in the month of August? And just directing the team. And I view that as a leader, just to have the vision of where we're going and how we're going to win. So that's a day in the life. Just a lot of, if you looked at my talk time, how much time is on the phone, it's fun, right? And then we do things like this, podcast, create content of value and share lessons that can be, think about years ago, we could have one-on-one conversations. And that was how we communicated. Well, now we have video and social media that I can now send this out to several 100,000, people. I can send it out to a couple hundred people on our team and get a message out to them. So that's what I continually try to make sure I'm staying ahead of that and leading the team well.
That's awesome. And all the way from your experience in sports and soccer, surrounding yourself with great people, now in your role at LoanDepot, you're almost scouting. You're out there, you're recruiting, you're making sure there's a great culture fit, that the dynamics of the team, as you mentioned, chemistry, some of the things that the US coaches were looking for was not only is this a star player, but do they gel? Is this a player that can play with this team? And that's so interesting that now there's a lot of transfer to what you're doing still. And I find that fascinating. What has been the single most important action that you've taken on a daily basis that has attributed most to your success? That's what this podcast is all about. It's about action items for success. So do you have any one thing that you can draw back to that has, pretty much been a consistent thing throughout your entire life and just always has ended up in a successful outcome?
So I'll share a life lesson that about 4 years ago, I went on an experience with a coach that I knew. He had worked with Tony Robbins' team and all this. And I recognized it was time for me. I was kind of in that rut, like that a lot of successful business people go into, where like money's there, I'm building a team, but I knew I wasn't at my potential and I knew I wasn't really fulfilled. And what I started to learn is I had gotten complacent. I was starting to look for these massive grand slam, right? Like big plays. I wanted the big wins. And this coach reframed everything for me. During that experience, we broke down my competitive nature can be good, but it can be bad. And what I learned, this is life lessons for all of us, is what's really going to matter, what's going to stack up and help you be successful. And the highly successful, the top 1%, I believe this is what separates them, is that they get daily wins. And over time, they will stack up. They aren't looking for that lottery ticket. They aren't looking for that one investment that's going to make them millions upon millions of dollars, or that one decision. It's multiple decisions that are stacked up daily. And it goes back to sports, that daily discipline, that commitment. And what I learned is going through that experience, as painful as it was, and breaking down who I am, where I was, how I got there, taking absolute ownership of how I got there. What I do each day is I have a kind of gratitude practice that I think of the 3 things that I'm grateful for. I love to work out, get my body moving in the morning. And so I've kind of created this ritual around that. And I have found for me, that will be a catalyst for my day. And what I would go back to is the last lesson that was learned from that anybody can implement today, is I started to realize I was somewhat slower than the highest level of the successful 1%, they make decisions much faster and they move on to the next thing because there's always something waiting. There's another decision. There's someone else to talk with. And so I started to shrink that time down. And that's something I'm still working on today is how do I get myself in a spot, almost like in a soccer game? How can I make a decision so quickly that I know where the next player is going to be? I can read the game. How do you read the game of life and the game of business so that you're thinking 3, 4, 5 plays ahead and you understand what's going to happen and you're on an auto response? Cool. This happens. Now I'm going to do this. I think that's what separates people. And that's what I would say for me that I've started to now really correlate. And it's a muscle. I will say it is something that over time gets stronger. And I'm still working on building that up because I think I've got more that I can improve around that.
Wow. What a great tip and analogy to, it's like throwing a football. Your muscle memory, if you've thrown it 1,000 times, someone does a post route over the middle and they're running, almost 20 miles an hour at a full sprint. Somehow your body knows the exact moment to release, the exact amount of pressure to put on that football, and it meets them mid-flight. So that analogy of getting that in tune with your life, the business world, and being able to then, throw that football, metaphorically speaking, and not have it be behind the receiver, but hit him right in the hands. That's a great analogy. I love that. And like you said, it's a muscle, it's something that you just have to be in tune with and working on a daily basis. So for LoanDepot, what is the percentage of referral to new business? It seems like a lot of your focus has been online first, which is very smart. I mean, the consumers have risen their hand and voted, we like this. So there's no surprise there that you're forward thinking in that. Do you have metrics around, what percentage of your business each year comes from new business, from online, SEO, advertising, that type of lead generation?
So I don't have all the statistics. I know we covered some of those like on the earnings call this week. It's fascinating. Okay. I'm listening into that as well. And we are multi-channel. So we have everything from joint ventures with home builders and real estate agents to our direct lending team that they are the call center. They typically are online and predominantly they'll do a lot of refinances and customers go online and shop. They end up there. We also have the team that I lead that's in market. We call them in market retail. And they're the people that live in your community and they are going to typically do purchases. They're going to work with real estate agents, home builders locally, financial planners, all that. What I can share with us is that we've continued to grow. And what we're focused on is we believe there's a two-part strategy to what differentiates us. One is technology. We have invested and we have our own proprietary technology that you can see online. And that is a huge advantage because that customer facing, when a customer goes online on their smartphone, right? Typically is where they start. If they want to apply and get a mortgage, we should make that simple for them, right? And I don't always say easy because easy requires like sometimes we think we're just going to press a button, it's going to be easy. No, we want to make it simple, meaning that we can collect your documents easy. We can verify your income. We can verify your assets. We can then have someone walk you through and educate you on what programs you qualify for, how much do you qualify for, and your budget. And what we've looked at is this hybrid approach of being online where customers start and also giving them an offering of in market is going to solve a problem that most other lenders are not built like we are. And we believe we've kind of bulletproofed ourselves. And it's shown over the last several years, if you look at customer acquisition online, customer acquisition local, they both still exist. A lot of people are still going to go to their local real estate agent that they know, they like, they trust. They want a warm referral. Great. We're going to show up there. Some customers go online and they don't know anybody. They're going to go there. We should show up there as well. Well, what about this other area that I've been very intentional, personal branding through social media? The more people that can see the imprints and go, wow, Brian's at LoanDepot. I like Brian. I like LoanDepot. So we've gotten very intentional on the personal branding should complement and really we should build this together. So LoanDepot's brand and Brian's brand should complement each other. The values, the things that we talk about, how we do things, they should be one and the same. And so people know us and we're not just a company. We now are people in your market. And you go, yeah, I'd love to work with them. So that's been our strategy and our group. Look, we've continued to grow. We started at about 125 million a year. And that was almost 4 years ago. And then our team this year, just my group, will do close to 3 billion, right? So I mean, massive growth, but very strategic, very smart. And I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg. We got a lot more we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so interesting. You mentioned omnichannel. I wrote an article 2 years ago in a Southern California top producer real estate magazine. And the headline was, Omnichannel is the new black.
Yeah.
And the concept was you can no longer just rely on a single channel for your lead conversation to be held on, because people are switching devices and channels and seeing things locally on billboards and then transferring over to social media and then watching a Hulu ad. And you ideally are everywhere, right? That's the ideal. And if it's done right, it has been shown statistically over and over again that there's a lift in all results, rather than doing one little campaign and just saying, oh, linearly, this didn't make sense. The ROI didn't match up. Well, if you multiply that across multiple platforms, all of the campaigns get impressions from multiple platforms, all of the leads do, and they all have a slight lift, which, as most savvy business owners know, has a compound effect to the total bottom line result. So I love that, and something that my agency absolutely focuses on. And, obviously LoanDepot has had massive success with it. So omnichannel is absolutely the way to go.
Yeah, it's been huge. There's a word shared with me years ago by a leader called ubiquitous. And that was kind of similar, like just being everywhere. And it's hard for a customer when they see you all these places that they show up, that they hang out. It's hard for them at some point to go, like, why haven't I called them? Like, I need to call them. And that's what we just want to be, that lender where it's just the choice is easy for them, right? And they can come to us and then we deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find your area of focus very interesting, bringing the massive LoanDepot brand to the local area. And one thing that I realized from a study that Fannie Mae had conducted years ago was an ethnography study about the home purchasers' lack of research in the loan process during the home buying process, and how most people get really excited about a house, but they haven't even been pre-approved yet and don't know if they can afford it.
Yeah.
And so my concept with my mortgage loan officer clients has been, how do we educate consumers in a way that hooks them and is very interesting from an advertising standpoint, but truly does educate them that there's really no sense in browsing all these sites and wasting all this time if you're not pre-approved. Let's get you pre-approved, right? So is there any insight that you can offer? Like, if you had a billboard that 5 million people would see every day driving by on this topic, what would it say?
Oh man, we've said to everybody, if you really want to save money buying that house, get pre-approved first.
Right.
Like, it's that simple, right? Like, get pre-approved, save money. Don't get pre-approved, spend more, pay over. And I say that because if they don't have that part of the process buttoned up and they haven't gone through, like with our team, we do a lot of what we call total cost analysis. We work with a group called Mortgage Coach, and a lot of our team will provide options. We also have our internal software, and we'll provide options for them. That customer may not know that they could put less down and what that would look like. What mortgage insurance options exist out there? Because there's not just one. And then for their personal profile today and down the road, what is best for them? And so I think this whole thing of, I'm going to look online and figure out all my mortgage options, that's all well and good. But we're talking about, for most people, the largest single asset and liability they're probably ever going to have. Wouldn't you want to take some time and just pause for a minute and get some great expert advice and have an advisor? And so we have been doing that. That's part of our social campaign, is why we go on and talk about home is everything. And we make sure everybody knows is home ownership is absolutely the dream. It is what people aspire to do. Let us help you make sure that you're buying it correctly in the best way for you, so that if you are taking a mortgage out, which we know a lot of cash buyers out there, but the people that are taking a mortgage, let's get that right for you. Let's show you what your options are, because wouldn't it be painful 10 years, 15 years from now to look back and go, man, I could have saved $10,000, $100,000 had I spent some time and actually got pre-approved properly.
That's right. No, absolutely. Tesla reinvented the car buying experience. Do you think that the real estate transaction will become mostly automated by 2030?
Depends on what part of it. I think we're already seeing some of that, right? When you look at things like remote online notarization, and you look at how we're able to digitally verify multiple sources of income now. Assets have been there for a while. And you look at what technology and AI is able to do, I think it's going to look very different. I think for the mortgage consultant out there and the real estate agent and those that are in title, all of these arenas. I even put appraisers in there. We've been kind of naive to think that that's not going to look different, right? Especially by 2030. Yep. Is look at today, the amount of property inspection waivers and the things that are coming that just AI can create that. Look at how much data is verified that on many of our customers that I know I see, they don't even turn in a document that is related to their pay because we have access to it all now, right? We can get that. Bank statements. That's something that years ago, you would have brought all these in, you would have faxed them, you would have done that. What we're starting to see, which is going to be an interesting trend, is right now with this low inventory and people that are there, we haven't seen as many for sale by owners, right? So you have to kind of go, well, real estate agent isn't going to be gone by any stretch. I think they're going to be a vital part of the process, but it's going to be those agents that have built up their brand and their value to a customer to know, a customer like myself, that I'm not actually looking to sell today, but agents that can bring deals and show customers what's out there and keep them up to speed so that it's more than just, hey, help me find a home. I think that's going to be pretty simple online. That's going to become more easy. But I think all of us need to think about what is the value we bring today and going forward. How do we differentiate ourselves in the market? Look, it's not any different than think about when the MLS data used to just be in a book. You had to go pick it up at the local real estate offices. And then when it went online and you can find it, people adapted and shifted. And there were also people that did not, that are no longer in the business. And the same is true in mortgage with technology. There are companies that have not adopted the online applications and the ease of verifying data. They still collect all this documentation. Well, right. One thing's pretty interesting about this is the changes that are happening. The technology is pushing us forward and pulling us in many ways to meet customer demands. And I think the customers are going to tell us what they expect and what they want. But I think they still want a trusted agent on the real estate side, and they want a trusted advisor on the mortgage side to help navigate them through.
I couldn't agree more. A common thread in these interviews I do with top real estate professionals in various facets of the industry has been relationship building. Mm-hmm. The critical importance of relationship building. And it seems like your team is very focused on that on the local level, even though you're doing such volume. You're still focused on getting them in touch with a local professional that understands the schools and understands their needs and understands the language and everything that goes on in that area that's important to them. So I really like that focus of your particular team and that focus on relationships. And in my opinion, by 2030, a lot of those ancillary aspects that are paperwork and heavily time intensive will be automated, but the connection, the consulting, the psychology of the mortgage professional and the real estate professional with the client will not be automated. You can't really automate a negotiation or a relationship. So I agree with you there. So do you have anything that LoanDepot does for clients that nobody else does in the industry? Is there any like closing gift strategy or I don't know, something super unique where it's like, oh man, no one else does this? You mentioned your technology, you've mentioned so many unique value propositions already, but is there a particular habit, some kind of philosophy with every transaction that really sets you apart?
So I would say where we've differentiated ourselves from other companies is we get to the customer first quite often, which we understand the psychology of that, which is that's why we show up local and we show up online and we show up places that customers would typically look for mortgage or real estate information. And what we found is the more we show up and we can retarget and we can make sure we're part of their lifestyle, because maybe they're ready to apply now, maybe they're not, but they continually see us. And you look at that strategy, we just signed, our partnership there with Major League Baseball. And we believe that's going to be a great partnership where you can see us there. And now the Miami Stadium with, we have the naming rights. And that's a very, very traveled airport, which we all know, and you can see it all there. I think that's going to continue to differentiate ourselves. And we also have given the customer optionality. If they want to go online and work with someone that's in one of our direct call centers, great. That's awesome. You can connect right away. The speed of response is very fast for us. But if they say, hey, look, I want to work with someone local. Who do you have in Nashville, Tennessee? Great. They can look online, or we will actually do that warm referral and put them in touch with someone in Nashville. So I think that's going to be unique. And I will share with you, this was announced this week, so I can share it, but we have this Grand Slam package that is coming out October 1. And so people that are listening, you can check it out, but it's going to be a bundle of services that we offer. And it's going to be the first that I know of in the industry that's delivered at scale with a company like ours that can actually back that up. It'll give the customer everything from cost savings that we talked about, some of the vendor options that they can shop for services. And we're going to bundle it because what customers have said is they want simplicity in the process. So if we can help them with anything from title insurance to homeowners insurance to making sure that anywhere they buy in the United States, we have a loan officer, we have a mortgage professional that can help them with that. And then we also have built our sister company, Mellow Home, with the top agents in the country that we will partner with to make sure they get a professional, typically one of the higher producing and one of the agents there that has a reputation and experience. So we're going to do that warm handoff to make sure that they're cared for in all aspects of that home purchase.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's a great, and so is it called the Grand Slam?
It is. We kind of played off the MLB piece and a couple articles came out and I'll tell you the feedback so far from some of my friends that are real estate professionals here. Love it. Some of my friends that are loan officers at other companies are asking me questions like, hey, what's going on with this? Like, we might want that. And it's going to be a nice marketing tool, but it actually has the power behind it to what we've all wanted is how do we add value, right? How do we simplify the process? And the customers have told us that's what they want. So we're going to deliver it.
I love that. Simplicity is brilliance.
Yeah.
What are 1 to 3 books that have greatly influenced your life or career?
So one I was talking about earlier today, Extreme Ownership, Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, huge book, was great. And then I go back to a Stephen Covey book, of course, 7 Habits, and then even the 8th Habit that came out later. But I think that was one for me that early in my life, I've read it several times and I've come back to it and been like, wow, there's things in there that I had not learned. And then being that it's strong, my foundation built on faith, I love the Bible. Like that's something for me, like I can learn from and I can go back to. It's timeless. And I would hope my kids, if they were to say, hey, what was the one book that dad read or passed on? I'm going with the Bible.
Got it. Yeah. Very important. Have spirituality as well as personal development in there. And that's a great mix.
Yeah.
How has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for later success? Do you have a favorite failure of yours? You mentioned previously not quite getting to play on the big stage in the U.S. Olympic team, but I'm curious if there's something else that comes to mind when I ask that question.
Yeah, so I would go the sports thing. If you're those that have played at a high level, know you move on to the next thing. It was pretty quick. Like when you didn't get picked for a team or you didn't make the team, like for me, there was always something next, like right behind it. And so I don't look at that necessarily as like a failure.
Okay.
The first one, I remember when I thought I was ready to get promoted and at the first company I was with, and we did these panel interviews, right? So they were new to me. You show up, imagine in a boardroom, you got 5 or 6 people sitting around the table. They're asking you all these questions about why you're the best person for it, asking you market data, all these things. How would you lead the team? How would you grow the team? And I remember very vividly not getting the first one. And it was probably my first time where I was like, wow, like, why didn't I get it? I was asking for feedback and things and I didn't get it. But what came out of that was one of my earliest mentors that came out of the group that he offered afterwards. He said, man, I was really impressed with you. While you're not ready for this role today, not yet, I see a lot of potential in you. And I want to help you with that. And he was much further in his career than I am. And I would say that taught me 2 lessons. One, failure is not final, right? It's not over. And 2, to connect up with a mentor at that stage, I had not sought them out, but they showed up. Sometimes we just got to be aware. And I would say for anybody, seek those mentors out, sometimes in unexpected circumstances. I could have left that and been like, screw this. Like I'm out. Like they didn't pick me. I'm going to another company. I'm going to take my stuff and pack up. No.
Right.
The third part to that I learned was some humility in that there were things they saw that maybe I didn't see yet, that I needed some awareness of myself, of where I was and where I wanted to go. And there's a gap that exists for all of us between where we are and where we could be. And as soon as you get clarity around what is holding you back from within there and what the steps are to get there, and you get very intentional every day about that growth, massive things start to happen. And so that was really a catalyst for me because later on, there were other opportunities I applied for and didn't get. But guess what? There were a couple that I did get that were pivotal that I think have set me up for today. When I came on to LoanDepot almost 4 years ago, there's no way the Brian of 10 years ago, quite honestly, even 5 years ago, was ready to lead a $3 billion a year organization. I wasn't ready. So I think of it this way. We've got a vision of we want to grow 8 to 10 billion in the next 5 years with our crew. Well, the Brian of today is not equipped to lead the team $8 to $10 billion. What do I need to do to make sure I'm ready? So I'm not changing roles. I'm not changing titles. I'm not changing anything, but I am changing me, and I'm going to grow into that person. And the most important part of that is, who am I going to bring with me? Back to sports. The best leaders bring people with them. And we talk about this language in our team is we want to create leaders that create other leaders that create other leaders, right? Generational legacy type leadership that we want to set ourselves up for massive success. And the only way to do that is for everybody to be in this together and be all in. And so that would be the lessons I would share is greatness and breakthroughs don't happen unless you've had some type of setback, I believe, or some type of failure. I don't know many people that have had a trajectory that went up the entire way. They've all had something that brought them back, that then gave them clarity to move forward again.
Powerful lesson, especially lifting others around you. You know, the best players, NBA's come into mind, like the Jordans. He made the whole team better.
Oh,
and it's an interesting concept because in some circles they'll tell you if your friends and your coworkers and the people around you are dragging you down, then you should probably upgrade your network, which to a certain degree is true. But in this regard, how many of them could you bring with you? It's an interesting question.
Yeah. And I think when you find out really if you're made for this, like the battle tested leaders, you will find that the strongest teams were typically built from within. And again, I look at some of the soccer teams I was a part of. They were the teams that we grinded out. We spent more time. We improved as a group. We had the chemistry. That's why we won. We were not always the most talented team. I remember my freshman year in college, we were not ranked in the top 25. Well, 5 games into it, we had built up this unique chemistry. We knew each other. We blood, sweat, and tears. Like we were just committed. We were all in. I could tell there was something different. We started off with a 5-game winning streak, 5 shutouts. We're doing things that people are like, who are these guys?
Yeah.
And we were not the most talented team. There were other talented teams. There were schools with much bigger budgets than us and all that. And so I think the real successful leaders find the people around them that are on that same journey, that they want to be where you are. They have a vision and goals. I always listen for, are they wanting to aspire to build something more? Then my job as the leader of the larger team and the larger unit is, how do I help them achieve that? Because if they achieve $1 billion here and $1 billion there and $1 billion there, and they're bringing other leaders with them, we're unstoppable. I mean, at that point, we're basically just replicating success and giving people the blueprint and saying, if you want to do it, we know how to do it. We just want to make sure you're the right model match for us on all the other kind of core components and their values and things there. So I think that's what's going to continually separate what makes our team different is we believe that, and we've continually produced growth without having to acquire it. We have built people from within.
I love that. And then it's really just the question of a culture fit. You know, the blueprint is there.
Yeah.
Are there any quotes you think of often or live by?
Ooh, that's a good one. I shared one yesterday. I think it might have come out on social today. It was an Oscar Wilde quote, and it was, be yourself because everybody else is already taken. And I shared that with my kids this week because they're going back to school. And I think about this often, like for many of us, I struggled with this was, you hear the fake it till you make it, or, try to emulate and be like this person or be like that person. Part of the biggest growth areas and breakthroughs in my life is when I got clarity on who I was and who God created me to be. Not comparing myself to someone else, not trying to be someone else, not trying to be somebody different at the office than I am when I'm on the soccer field or with my family. Once I had this, I call it intentional congruence. One of my coaches kind of teaches this concept and taught that. And what that really at a big 30,000 foot view is the same Brian you get in the boardroom with LoanDepot, the same Brian you get on the soccer field, the same Brian in the church, the same Brian at home with his kids, same Brian hanging out with his buddies, watching a soccer game or football game or whatever it is. I'm one person. I'm the same person. I should show up my best to all of those. What can I give and contribute while I'm in that moment? But that intentional congruence allows me to be me in all those situations, and that's what life's about. Can you imagine? You think about the masks people try to put on, like, I'm going to be this person over here. I'm going to be this person over there. That life is hard. That life is shallow. And I would say that quote was just a good reminder for me is like, be myself. Like God created me uniquely with gifts and talents. What is it that I can contribute? And I think we're all on that journey is to find out what can we contribute. And we're not done yet until they call us home. Like I still got a lot to, I think, to give to the world.
Absolutely. Intentional congruence. That's a term that I had not heard before, but I had experienced through one of my top clients. He's always himself. It's a 26-year real estate broker. And honestly, when I started to work with him, I thought that he was this charismatic, goofy version of himself in meetings. And then as I got to know him more and more, and all of a sudden we're going out to dinner, or we're golfing, or, I'm meeting up with his family when he's out in California for a trip. He's the same goofy, charismatic person. He's always him. And, that concept, as simple as it is, I feel like I've gone through times in my life, whether it was just a coming of age, insecure teenager thing, where I'd put on a different face for different situations, and it's exhausting. But nowadays, I do my best to be intentionally congruent at all times. And tell you what, it's much less exhausting. It's in fact, a lot less taxing as far as your energy. And also, it comes across so much more authentic. And there's a lot of value in that. So that's awesome. I'm glad you shared that. What's one of the best or most worthwhile investments you've ever made? And oftentimes my guests say something that's non-monetary, but I'm curious if you have an answer to that question.
So I'll give two different answers. One, I look at it this way: is you can't pour from an empty cup. So the best investment any of us can make is in ourselves. I used to struggle with this really bad. Like, it was selfish for me to go work out. It's selfish for me to go to these personal development conferences. It's selfish for me to spend our family's money on a coach. It's, all these things, right? I'm telling myself it's selfish because sometimes the world will tell you that and things are there. But I would flip the script and say, what happens if you don't invest in yourself? Do you ever see an athlete or someone that's that level of success that got there by accident? Almost never, right? And so for us, we need to invest in ourselves, because you can't pour from an empty cup, meaning when you get done with your day, for me, I have 3 kids. Well, guess what? When we get done today, I've got some calls and I've got some meetings. When I wrap up, I can't go downstairs and be like, okay, guys, peace out. I'm done. I've had a full day. I got nothing for you. That happens today. There are dads and there are people, moms probably listen to this and they go, man, I'm wiped out. I don't have what it takes to be there. And so I think that's where we have to figure out, to your point, what gives us energy, what allows us to be our best in all these situations. So invest in yourself. That will require you to spend money. That will require you to spend time and energy. Not all of them require money though. And I will tell you, over the last year and a half, something that we've proven and I've found is I started my podcast and I started connecting up with people for $0. Literally, when you reach out to people and you make a connection, you have them on the show. Yes, there's production costs and yes, there's other things and all that. But the reality is some of the people we brought on were some of the biggest influences and mentors, and I've yet to meet more than half of them in person. So that tells me the barriers to entry are up here. They're not always money, because you can connect with people on social. So I'd say go there. The next one, I'd tell you the best investment that I can make is out of that. It's kind of a complement to it, is my wife, number one, and then my kids, because no one else is responsible for them but me. And I believe, right, when we took the oath, my wife and I'll be married 19 years next week. And then I got 3 kids. Look, I'm their dad. I'm their one dad they get. I've got to give my best. And that's my family I need to take care of, because if everybody does that and takes care of their family and their house, then when we come together as a collective community, then you have a greater chance of success, right? That's where things start to happen. And I would say that's where my focus is in those 2 areas. And the rest of the stuff takes care of itself, right? Like I share this a lot, but love God and love people. If you do that well, things are going to work out.
I love how your investments were family. You, your wife, your kids. That's what life really is all about. So really great to hear that from you. And when you have a million things going on and you're trying to grow a $3 billion team to an $8 or $10 billion team, I'm sure that there are many decisions that come across you and your desk every day that you say no to. Yeah. So what is your process for evaluating what to say no to?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm a huge believer. What I've learned is collaboration is king. And so we have appointed people on our team that I trust, that have been with me, that I trust their discernment, their judgment, their input. As we're making decisions for our team, I collaborate with those team members. They're leaders on the team. And what I have found is the best ideas, the best decisions now are a collective response. It's not Brian sitting in a vacuum. I used to think, as early in my leadership journey, I used to think I needed to be the person with all the answers and make all the decisions. And I put so much stress on myself. And at the end of the day, I didn't have the best ideas. I knew I was good at implementing and executing those. And so I realized, what if I started bringing people into conversations? And most companies won't do this because of their fear of, well, if we tell them too much, they're going to know what the company's making. They're going to know that we could do this or do that. We're going to empower them and they're going to feel like, that they can take over. It's going to be a revolt or whatever we tell ourselves. The reality is people want to be part of a team that they feel like they're actually a part of and not just receiving a paycheck. And so our decisions are very collaborative here. So for example, if we're running a pricing special, a marketing special, we're doing anything, we're hiring people. As I hire people today, I'll tell you an important decision for me is something I shifted a few years ago. We don't hire another leader on our team unless they've talked to 3 other leaders on the current team. Because here's what I've learned. And you know this in sales, right? Someone may show up and it may be a great interview. You may really feel good about them. But the chances of them going through 3 other leaders on our team that know me, that know what we're about, know the standard, they're living it today, the chances of them going through that process as a candidate and knowing who we are and what we're all about is significantly greater. And the other part of it is we are also screening them. Are they a model match? Are they a fit for us? I'll tell you, if you do that well, if you attract and hire the right people around you, decisions actually become a little bit easier because we know what we're doing as far as decisions. So that would be one area I'd say, big takeaway, helped me tremendously. Don't be afraid to share the things with your team of, hey, I don't know. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's where I think we should go. But man, I'm not sure about this. What do you think? Is there other ideas we haven't come up with? Your team will help guide you. And then now they have ownership with it. So I'd say that's one area. The other area that I've really started to kind of focus in on is, you're talking about all these different things happening. And I remember a coach of mine talked about, you're juggling all these balls in the air. And imagine some of those balls are rubber. Work, your fitness, actually, some of those things, even your finances. There's probably not anything you can do in one day that's going to crash and burn some of those things. You're juggling those are rubber balls. They'll bounce back up. If you drop one, it'll bounce. But your family, right? Your faith and some of those things that are like core to who you are, those are glass. If you drop those and you screw up, huge, like we're talking like big level, they break. They're hard to replace. You got to put them back together. And if you make decisions from a place of where your priorities are and you're clear on your priorities, you heard me talk about like family. Well, the reality is I am going to put my family first, and people on my team understand that and they know that. And if someone's not okay with that, maybe they're not the best person for me to be their leader, because they need to understand that if my daughter has a soccer game at 7:00 or on the weekend or somewhere, I'm going to be there. That's a priority for me. I may not come to something, or I may say no to things, because what I've realized is this isn't a practice life. Like, right? Like we are here and we need to live in that. And so I found people around me. And here's what's beautiful about this is that when you give people permission to do that themselves, they now will have a better balance in their own lives of, if family is really important to them, but they're struggling to make time and they see their manager never does any of this stuff, the likelihood of them ever doing it's not good. Well, guess what? Then their marriage is stressed, their relationship with their kids is stressed, they're stressed. And I just empower everybody and say, look, I'm going to live that way. I think you should too. I think it's good for you. And guess what? When they show up to the office and when they're here, whether it's 4 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours, whatever it is that day, they give their all because they want to be here providing value, and they want to go home and they want to provide value. Right. So I think that's what I would share is just years of not getting it right and trying to figure out where it is. And I still struggle with that a lot of times, right? Like it's not easy. I wish I could tell you I make decisions and they're all right and they all go well and all that. No, God, no. The last skill I would tell you that I've really been focused on the last few years is the ability to adapt quickly. I mean, it goes back to decision making. Is the sooner you can build that muscle and start to build it, where if something doesn't work, how quickly do you recognize it? And do you know what the next step is going to be? Man, that is like a superpower.
What a powerful takeaway to bring the decisions to your team sooner. I think as leaders, we carry that burden far too often and far too long. So yes, what a great piece of advice to just bring it to the team sooner, have a more open and collaborative explanation, or a conversation rather, about decisions that impact them. And you don't have to come in and be the decision maker and then it's all on you, and you don't have to have this crystal ball and know all the answers, right? You can have input and collaborate, and that's the value of a mastermind anyway, is the exponential value when you have multiple minds working on the same problem towards the same goal. It's so much better than, you in a vacuum. So great feedback there. In the last 5 years, What new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life?
Ooh, that's a good one. So probably about 5 years ago, I was going through a pretty traumatic kind of situation where I was part of a team in business in a group, and I could tell there was some things that weren't really congruent there. It wasn't really aligned up, and they came to me. I'll never forget. And it was on Cinco de Mayo, and I get a phone call from one of the executives, and he's like, "Hey, I just don't think you're a fit for the team anymore." And I was like, "Whoa!" And I remember in that moment, it was like the whole world is like crashing, and all these things are. I'm like, "What happened here?" Like, you got distrust. What did I do? What is this? What is that? And I remember through that experience, that was actually a catalyst for me to recognize, although you can be in a good situation, there may be a great situation for you out there. And I was so loyal. One of my kind of core values from playing soccer was I was so loyal. I didn't even recognize they weren't adding value to me and I wasn't adding value to them. We kind of outgrown each other in a way that it just wasn't the right fit. And I look back now, and that was a blessing in disguise, as painful as it was. And they actually ended up offering me to come back because they started to realize, oh, maybe we made a mistake. But that opened my eyes to something that many times we look at life, and when disappointments happen or something we might deem as a failure happens, it actually might just be opening our eyes to a new possibility. And right around that time, I'd gotten connected up with a new mentor and coach, and he took me through some areas that I wasn't as competent as I needed to be. I didn't have the belief in myself that I needed to have to get to the next level. I had people around me that believed in me. They saw my potential, as people will call it. I didn't believe enough in myself. And it's not a cocky arrogance. It's not any of that. But all of us need to find that belief of who we are, who we were created to be, and figure out how do we get to the next level, because our family, our friends, those that we care about are counting on us. And so I'd say that was the thing that I've taken away. The last 5 years have been significant growth. And I have intentionally put myself in rooms and around people that I probably would never have been in the room before. Started thinking about bigger concepts. How do I scale things? Like, what do I do with my family to go on more vacations? Where are we investing outside of what I do in my day job to make sure, right, that we're balanced there? Like, until you get around people that think bigger than you, you're only going to think like the people that you surround yourself with. And that was a game changer, that sometimes it takes those situations to pull you out of it. And then I started, you talk about almost like, trying to remember the name of the movie that, he takes the medicine, the pill, the drug, like
Limitless?
Limitless. It was almost one of those moments where you're like, there's all of this other stuff happening. And I was just too narrowly focused in the business and my job. And pulled me out.
So interesting. Where's the blessing in this disappointment?
Yeah.
Right? It's so interesting when you look back and all these things that were so devastating in the moment ended up being catalysts for change, or such blessings in retrospect.
Yeah.
It's like if you had the superpower to just see it in the moment, it would be a totally different human experience. But, I think part of that process as well is that disappointment and then creating that emotional energy to change. So you've been very generous with your time. Is there a question that I should have asked you, or, anything that you'd like to elaborate on from earlier?
You covered some good ones. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. So thank you for the time and all that's there. What I would share, and when we came out with the book, The Conversations with Covey, I was able to interview and put in there a lot of people, but the 10 that we selected, what I would share with everybody is you're one person, one connection, one conversation away from changing your life. And that inspiration needs to connect up with an action that you are accountable and you need to take ownership of, because none of us move forward without that first step. And what that book and talking to those people taught me was we're a lot more alike than we're not alike. And many times we think we're so different, or I've had this, or I can't do that. And those are just limiting beliefs that I believe are not true. And I've experienced in my own life on both sides of the equation of that. And I would just encourage you to find people in your life, or find people I have found even through social that you may not know, but you can follow their journey and you'll get some inspiration. What you put in will come out, right? It's kind of like what you actually plant, you'll actually grow, and you've got to water it. One of my favorite people, Dabo Sweeney, coach at Clemson, was talking about this the other day with Ed Milet, and he was talking about, man, it's not even just enough to like water to fertilize and all that. You got to like take care of things in your life that matter. And where you actually plant your feet and where you fertilize, where you put things, you're going to grow. And so be where your feet are, be a blessing to other people. And that's what I've learned. And if we all do that, it's amazing what possibilities and what things will start to then be attracted into your life, and you'll change your life.
Powerful. Thank you so much. How can listeners follow your journey or contact you?
Yeah, so best way, we just updated the website. So www.briancovey.com. That's got the book, the podcast, speaking stuff, all the stuff there. I'm on Instagram. Somebody took Brian Covey before I got on Instagram several years ago. So I went with the Brian Covey, super original. So I spend time there. Then I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook, and you can just find me. You'll see my picture and Brian Covey there.
Awesome. Brian Covey, everyone, VP at LoanDepot, but so much more than that. Very interesting and successful human. And this has been an incredible conversation. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeffrey. This has been awesome. And continue to bless others and inspire them, man. You're doing great things.
Hey, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you want to accomplish your real estate goals, then I highly suggest downloading my free Ultimate Real Estate Goal Setting Framework. The link is in the description of the show, and it will help you break down your annual income goal into the amount of phone calls, appointments, or open houses you need in order to achieve that goal. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.